They said this course would make us better neighbors. Professor Langston grinned when he said it, like a pastor teasing the punchline to a sermon. We met in a creaking rec center on Detroit's west side, under a busted clock and a mural peeling like a scab. The fluorescent lights hummed. The benches squeaked. Every voice carried. He didn't start with rules. He started with a story. Imagine you're driving the night bus, he said, palm cutting the air. Brakes fail. Up ahead, 5 city workers in orange vests, heads bent, backs turned. On a side street, 1 person alone. You can't stop. You can only turn. He let the question sit, heavy as summer heat. My pen clung to the paper like it could keep me safe. I saw my brother, Jamal, under those lights, the way the world decided things about him like he wasn't there. What's the right thing to do? He asked. Hands rose. Dre, broad-shouldered, tattooed forearms, said, You turn. Save the 5. Bria, braided crown gleaming, didn't raise her hand. She looked at me the way old secrets look at you, like they've been practicing. I felt Darius beside me, the warmth of his thigh against mine, the warmth that used to be home and had become a question. Please like, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. Okay, Professor Langston said, strolling. He never stood still. You'd turn the wheel. You'd let 1 die to save 5. Why? Numbers, Dre said. Can't be right to kill 5 when you could kill 1. He spoke like you cross a street, quick, eyes scanning. Murmurs of agreement. Then Bria stood. You're missing something, she said. That 1 person didn't sign up for your math. We all signed up for gravity, Dre shot back. Laughter cracked the tension. Professor Langston cut through. Hold it. Try a different angle. He lifted his hand like a lever. You're not driving now. You're on a pedestrian bridge. Same runaway bus, same 5. Beside you, a massive man leaning over the rail. If you push him, he'll stop the bus.
He'll die.
5 live. Who pushes? Hands that shot up before curled into pockets. Nah, Darius said, voice of velvet blade. I don't touch him. Why not? The professor asked. Because that's murder with fingerprints. His words bumped something raw in me. Fingerprints.
Jamal.
Sirens that never hurried for us. The choice someone else made that left him bleeding on cracked asphalt while the city pretended it was bad weather, not negligence. Professor Langston nodded. Same numbers, different feeling. Why? Kiana, silver nose ring, voice like a bell, stood. Turning a wheel is one thing. Putting your hands on somebody's chest and shoving? That's another. The man on the bridge wasn't even in the path. Neither was the one on the side street, technically, the professor said. He's just standing there like the big guy. But he's on the road, Kiana said. His risk is baked into the scene. Bria crossed her arms. Risk ain't a coat you put on by accident. My stomach clenched. Once, Darius told me secrets like prayers. Once, my body leaned into his and believed. Then there was the night of the shooting at Rosa's, cheap neon flickering over cheap beer, when he took a phone call and walked outside and Jamal followed, and somebody somewhere turned a wheel. Professor Langston paced, hands clasped behind his back. Let's complicate things. Imagine you're a doctor. 6 ER patients. 1 is critically hurt. 5 have injuries you could fix, but only if you leave the 1. Save 5, lose 1. Save 1, lose 5. What do? Dre exhaled through his teeth. Save the 5. Now, the professor said. Transplant surgeon. 5 need organs. In the next room, a healthy man. You could. Don't do that, Bria said under her breath. Take his organs and save the 5, Professor Langston finished, eyes scanning us. Who agrees? Silence. Somewhere, a radiator coughed. I could hear the rust. Bria lifted her chin. It's different. Show me, the professor said. You're turning the doctor into a butcher, she said. The patient came for help, not for you to rewrite his last page. Malik, soft-spoken, always listening like he was translating the air, raised a hand. So, the difference is consequences versus rules, he said. What happens versus what you're allowed to do, no matter what happens. Say more, the professor encouraged. Malik rubbed his thumb over his knuckle. Sometimes the result matters most. Sometimes the act matters more. Like, there are lines you don't cross, even to get a good result. Welcome, the professor said, smiling, to the old fight between outcomes and obligations. Darius leaned close, breath warm. You okay? I'm fine, I whispered, lying like a pro. My chest was a drumline. He'd stood on Rose's sidewalk that night with a face like marble while voices shouted and tires squealed. He said he had nothing to do with it. That he went outside to take a call. That he couldn't have known. That life does its arithmetic, and we're all stuck with the answer. Let me tell you a true story, Professor Langston said, and the room leaned forward. A small boat wrecked on open water. 4 people survive. 2 senior, 1 regular crew, and a teenage kid, no family. They have 2 cans of beans, a sea turtle, and then nothing. Days pass. Hunger claws. The kid drinks salt water. He gets sick. One of the seniors suggests a lottery. 1 refuses. No lots drawn. The next day, the senior says a prayer, cuts the kid's throat with a folding blade. They live off him for 4 days. A ship spots them. They come home. Trial. The defense? Necessity. Better 1 dies, so 3 live. He paused. The hum of the lights became a mosquito in my ear. Who says not guilty? He asked. A few hands, Dre's, Malik's, a couple more. Who says guilty? Most of us, including Bria. Including me. Reasons, he said. Malik cleared his throat. Desperation changes the math. So anything goes, Bria snapped. Just say you're hungry first? Not anything, Malik said, eyes low, steady. But if you're dying, choices get uglier. Doesn't make them good. Might make them forgivable. Darius watched me, searching. I watched the floorboards, counting splinters, pretending I didn't know this story in a different costume. Kiana raised her hand slowly. What if the kid agreed? She asked. If he said, I'm dying anyway, take me. Would that matter? It matters to me, Malik said. Consent does work. It returns the person their own say. Not to me, Bria said. You can't sign your soul away because you're thirsty. That's just coercion with paperwork. Professor Langston grinned sadly. Sharp minds tonight. He pointed to the peeling mural, a painted hand holding a scale. How heavy is consent? How clean is a lottery? Would you feel different if they drew lots? Yeah, Dre said. At least it ain't 3 big men deciding the kid's fate in whispers. I got a question, said an older man in the back I hadn't noticed before, gray beard crisp like snow on brown brick. If the lottery says I lose, and then I say I changed my mind, do I get to live? Verbal contracts matter, someone joked, nervous laughter. Do you keep killing the weakest until rescue? Bria demanded. What's the line? Where do you stop? You stop when you can live with yourself, Darius said low. The words went off like a smoke bomb. Nothing to grab, but your lungs burned. I remember Jamal asking me for $20 that morning and promising me the world. I remembered blood drying to a dark map on the sidewalk, its borders understood by those who walked there. Between sessions, I wrote poems about roads choosing people. About hands that didn't push but still killed. Darius sent texts that landed like wet leaves. You know I'd never hurt him. You know me. You know me. I wanted to ask. Which edition? Back in class, Professor Langston brought in a stack of paperbacks with yellowed edges. Some folks say add up happiness and go with that. Some folks say rules are rules, no exceptions. He scribbled names on the whiteboard, no famous statues, just nicknames for ideas. Outcomes guy, duties girl. We'll read both, but first, I want to tell y'all why this matters. He set the marker down. Philosophy messes with your furniture, he said. It rearranges the room you live in. What you thought was a wall becomes a window. What you thought was a window becomes a mirror. It's risky. You may not like what you see. Bria watched him like she'd watched a lot of men talk big under humming lights. Kiana flipped her pen between fingers. Dre stretched his legs, ankle cracking. Malik took notes like every sentence could turn a lock. I didn't want a mirror. I wanted a door. Here's the real warning, Professor Langston added. Thinking hard might make you a worse citizen before it makes you better. A disobedient heart is a noisy house. That night, Bria called me. I could hear her TV murmuring, a storm forecast, losing names. "Girl," she said, "you look like you're thinking yourself into a grave." "I'm fine. I lied, my new cardio." "You believe him?" she asked. "Darius?" "I don't know what I believe," I said. The words tasted like pennies. "Do you want to know what I know?" she asked. "Because knowledge is a messy haircut. You can't put it back after." "Tell me." She sighed. Rose's cameras caught faces, not sound. But a bartender heard Darius talking to somebody he called Cuz, right before Jamal went out. Said, "Don't let it get messy. 1 is better than 5. The sentence crawled over my skin like ants. "You sure?" I asked. "I ain't ever been sure of anything," Bria said. "But I am sure he's comfortable in rooms where other people bleed, so he doesn't have to." I hung up and stared at the ceiling. The crack above my bed looked like a river splitting a city in two. I tried to be a bridge. In every story, the bridge is the one that gets pushed. The next day, I brought the sentence to class like contraband. It burned a hole in my pocket. Professor Langston dimmed the lights and played a recording, a neighborhood dispute circle, church folding chairs in a ring, voices dulled by the echoing fellowship hall. A mother spoke. "They say my boy pointed a gun. They say they had to shoot first. Numbers, numbers. Who's counting my sleep?" He hit pause. "Why do we love numbers?" he asked softly. "Because they feel clean. But life is dirty." Kiana raised her hand. "Clean answers are a luxury we don't get." "Exactly," he said. "So, what do we do with dirty ones?" "Wash our hands," Bria muttered. "Or own the stain," Malik said. Sweat slipped down my back. I raised my hand. "What if the person turning the wheel benefits?" I asked. "What if saving 5 also saves their name? Their business? Their seat at the table?" "That's a conflict of interest," Professor Langston said immediately. "That muddies the math. What if the person who dies is easy to write off?" My voice rusted on the edges. "No dependents. No degree. No one reads his poems. No one with a title knows his face." "That's not a number," Kiana said. "That's a story. And stories are heavy." Darius watched my mouth like it made weather. The room felt too small for the names in it. It felt like a trapdoor with a steering wheel beside it. After class, Darius waited by the stairs. Outside, evening slid into the street like oil. "Talk to me," he said. "About what?" I asked. "About your eyes giving closing arguments," he said, grin not reaching his gaze. "Did you say it?" I asked. "At Rosa's. 1 is better than 5. He stared like I'd spoken a language he'd forgotten. Then he shrugged, a movement so practiced it felt choreographed. "It's a saying," he said. "People say things." "Did you say it?" I said something like it. His jaw tightened. I was trying to stop it from becoming worse. Worse than dead. My voice cracked. He was 19. "Jamal had choices," he said softly. "We all do." "Not like you," I said. "The truth is a blade that doesn't know how to be gentle." He flinched. "You think I think you stood on a bridge," I said, pulse in my temples, "and you didn't push, but you didn't grab either." Silence stretched. He looked past me, to the building behind me, the mural, the busted clock. "I don't get to be innocent," he said finally. "I learned that early." "Me either," I whispered. He reached for my hand. I let him touch my fingers, not my palm. "There's a difference." The next session, Professor Langston stapled handouts, a real court opinion from a different city. He read aloud, "Necessity is not a defense to homicide." He looked up. "That's the law here. But the debate keeps breathing." "Law is an instruction manual for yesterday," Bria said. "Tomorrow don't read." "Sometimes," the professor said. "Sometimes law holds a line we forget how to hold." Dre leaned forward. "So, what is the line? Is it don't kill? Or don't decide who dies?" Malik scratched at a coffee stain on the table. "Maybe the line is, don't treat people like tools. Even when you want a bridge." "Tools, not beings," Professor Langston echoed.
Good.
That language comes from a man who liked rules. But it also sounds like common sense. Don't use people. Except we use people all the time, Kiana said. We use their time, their trust, their bodies, their labor. Sometimes we pay them. Sometimes we pay them with praise that evaporates. Then the question, the professor said, is, do they get a say? Or, do we write their part? The room went quiet. Bria's knuckles whitened. I pressed my tongue to my teeth until it hurt. Darius didn't come that night, and every empty chair is a kind of witness. 2 days later, a hummingbird of gossip streaked through the neighborhood. A video of the alley behind Rose's surfaced. Foggy, shaky, bleary. A tall figure in a hoodie steps back as a scuffle spills out. A voice, maybe Darius, says, "Chill, chill, hey. 1 is better than 5. A gun flashes. Bodies scatter. The camera loses the thread. A siren wails late. Bria sent me the clip. Don't puke, she texted. I watched it 3 times. On the 4th, I looked away and watched myself in the black rectangle of the screen. My face was an essay with no thesis. In class, the video glowed on Malik's phone, passed hand to hand like communion, but poison. Dre shook his head. He didn't pull it, he said. He didn't make the trigger go. Sometimes you don't need to pull, Kiana said. Sometimes you just need to map the city for somebody. Say it plain, Bria said. He spoke like a man who keeps a ledger. Credits here, debits there, we cool. Professor Langston didn't ask us to be neutral. He asked us to be honest. Whose story is this, he asked. Who gets to tell it? Jamal can't, I said, and the room bowed to that truth. Small justice. The city opened a review. Big nothing. Reviews in this city are where truth goes for a nap. I stopped sleeping. Words crawled over me in the dark. Revenge offered me a seat the way a bus driver nods. Get on or don't. I went to see Mama Lorraine, who cuts hair and reads hearts in the back of her shop. The mirror smelled like coconut oil and memory. You came for permission, she said, parting my curls like thoughts. I can't give it. To do what? I whispered. Whatever you've been rehearsing, she said. Little girl, you cannot heal grief by making choices that will grieve you later. I want him to hurt, I said. My throat burned. I want him to feel pushed. You think hurt is a math problem? She asked. You think if he aches you won't? Outside, the sky looked like a bruise changing colors. I walked past the rec center and stared at the bridge over the freeway, chain-link fence rattling with every truck. The cars split the air like arguments. An empty soda can lay by the curb, crushed. Its shine caught the streetlight and made a promise it couldn't keep. Most things do. We read a piece that week about rights like unbreakable plates you're not supposed to repurpose. Even for a feast, Professor Langston said. Especially then. Dre grimaced. So, what? We starve. Sometimes, the professor said. Sometimes you bake different. Sometimes you stop throwing parties that need blood. Sounds like poetry, Bria said. That's why it's hard, he replied. He asked us to write a letter we'd never send. To someone you believe owes you a life, he said. Or, to someone you owe. I wrote to Darius. I told him he had a beautiful laugh that made rooms forgive themselves. I told him his way of looking at problems, tilting them until the light hit, was a gift turned bad. I told him Jamal wanted to build a studio and learn to fix old cars, and that he loved his sneakers like they could carry him out of this place. When I finished, my hands shook. Malik read his letter aloud, voice steady. He forgave someone I knew he shouldn't. Kiana folded hers slow, like origami. Bria didn't write. She said, my letter is a knife, and I'm out of envelopes. We laughed, thin and grateful for the relief. Even Professor Langston smiled, pained. The night it broke, rain pinned the city to the ground. Rose's parking lot shone like a black mirror. Darius texted, we should talk where it started. I put on my heaviest coat and a lighter heart, which is to say, none. He stood under the flickering neon, hood up, hands bare. I didn't mean, he began. Stop, I said. Tell me the truth you tell yourself when you can't sleep. He swallowed. I thought if I could keep it to 1, It wouldn't become a war. We've buried too many. I wanted to save 5. You wanted to save yourself, I said. The words felt like I'd been saving them for a duel. He nodded, rain mapping his cheeks. Both can be true. I stepped closer. He smelled like damp cotton and old fear. You chose for him, I said. You used his life like a tool, because the job needed doing. His mouth trembled. I keep hearing him laugh, he said. That stupid laugh, when the Pistons miss a layup. I keep hearing it in the quiet. I closed my eyes. Me too. We stood there, 2 ghosts practicing being alive, while the sign buzzed Rose's name into the storm and didn't mean it. At the last session, Professor Langston dimmed the lights again and said, "Skepticism is a warm bed. It tells you nothing matters, so you can stop moving. But your heart won't stay asleep." He asked for last words. Dre said, "I still turn the wheel, but I'll say a name when I do." Kiana said, "Consent is a language we ain't fluent in yet." Malik said, "Fair process helps, but it ain't God." Bria said, "Murder is murder," and her voice shook and then didn't. "But I know we live in rooms where the floor tilts. I ain't judging from level ground." "My turn," I said. "I used to think justice was a door you knock on. Now I think it's a song you hum while you work. It keeps you honest. It keeps you from using people as bridges and calling it mercy." After class, people hugged awkwardly. We promised dinners we wouldn't plan. Professor Langston pressed a book into my hand. "For when the room rearranges again," he said. I walked home under a smeared moon. The city smelled like wet concrete and fryer grease. I passed the bridge. No one was on it. I stopped anyway. I put my hands on the railing. I kept them there. I did not push. A week later, the review closed like reviews do, with words that folded in on themselves. No charges. Policy adjustments like putting band-aids on weather. The neighborhood did what it always does, carried on, carrying everything. I met Darius at the river. Cold wind bit our ears. Gulls told jokes only they liked. He kept his distance. So did I. "I won't come to your mama's anymore," he said. "Unless she calls." "She won't," I said. "But I'm not going to ruin you." He nodded, almost relieved, almost ashamed. "What will you do?" "Right," I said. "Teach kids how to drive a bus with brakes that work." I let the silence settle. "And I'll say Jamal's name until the city has to move something to make room for it." He rubbed his hands. "I'm sorry." "I know," I said. "But that's not a lever I can pull." When he left, the river kept unspooling, gray ribbons slipping past the cold. I thought of the boat story, of the kid without a family. I thought of my own voice in yesterday's room and decided to bring it into today. Justice didn't arrive. It wasn't a guest, it was a chore. I went home to do it. I opened a notebook. I rearranged the furniture. I stared into the mirror until it became a window, and then I wrote. Spring slipped in dress like apology, soft rain, tender green, sirens a little farther away. I took my class to the pedestrian bridge. We pressed our palms to the chain link, watched traffic stitch the city. Every day, I told them, you'll get a choice that looks like a lever. They waited. Young faces, old lessons. If you pull it, name the person it hurts. Say it out loud, so you don't turn a life into arithmetic. Afterward, Malik stayed behind, taller in the sunlight than the winter had allowed. You still mad at the world? He asked. Every morning, I said. But it doesn't get to drive. He smiled a tired, honest smile. Good. I passed Rose's that evening. The neon had finally died a mercy. On the brick, someone had painted Jamal in block letters, thick and blue, with a crown tilted sideways. I touched the crown with 2 fingers like a blessing. Bria stepped out of the shadows with a fat marker and drew a second crown beside the first. One for the boy, she said. One for the boy we still got left in us. I went home and opened the notebook I'd been building into a raft. I wrote his laugh first. I wrote the bridge. I wrote the promise I owe the living. Not to push, not to forget, not to let the room go back to how it was. Then I turned the page and kept going. Thank you for watching. Please like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more stories like this.